Welcome to the 54th in a series of shows focused on Brookline as an age-friendly community. In 2012, Brookline was the first community in New England to be designated an age-friendly city by the World Health Organization of the United Nations. Since then, AARP also designated Brookline as one of its age-friendly cities. This was based on the commitment of the residents, the select board, and town departments, and leadership provided by Brookline CAN, an all-volunteer organization. All viewers are welcome to join Brookline CAN, which is a network of people, ideas, and actions. And all they need to do is go to the Brookline CAN website at brooklinecan.org. Our guest today is State Representative Tommy Vitolo. In November 2018, Tommy Vitolo was elected state representative for the 15th Norfolk District, a good part of which includes a good part of Brookline, most of Brookline. He is also currently, his activities are vice chair of Joint Committee on Labor and Workforce Development. He's a member of the Joint Committee on Advanced Information Technology, the Internet, and Cybersecurity. He's on a Joint Committee on Healthcare Financing Affairs, and he's on the Joint Committee on Consumer Protection and Professional Licensure. He got a full merit scholarship to North Carolina State, and that's where his education began. He earned 3 bachelor degrees and met his future wife, Jennifer Taranto. As a Mitchell Scholar, he obtained a master's degree in Ireland. He entered the PhD program at BU College and was finally a College of Engineering in 2002 and finally settled down in Brookline. He received a PhD in systems engineering, and he spent, before getting involved in with another company, he spent 6 months as a stay-at-home dad. Then he joined Synapse Energy Economics. He's been there 13 years, working in tech analysis and advice on energy matters. His clients include attorneys general and environmental advocates, and his work and energy are directed towards fighting for utility customers and a cleaner environment. Tommy's been involved in Brookline since 2007 as a town meeting member and as a constable from 2010 to 2019. Welcome, Tommy. Can I call you Tommy?
Please, and thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Let's get right to it. Okay. Older adults, I'd like to focus on us, if you don't mind. Although it probably covers things that are for us, cover a lot of other people of all ages.
That's right.
So today, what are you working on that specifically, at least older adults would focus on?
Sure. Excuse me. There's a couple of bills I'm working on in particular, and before I even get there, I want to sort of point out that in many ways, the biggest thing that the state legislature deals with is the budget. And a huge fraction of our state budget is spent on salaries and benefits of state employees. Another significant fraction of our budget is spent on healthcare for people who don't work for the state. Mass health is sort of the most commonly used form of that. That can impact seniors, certainly impacts many other people. And thinking through the budget and the way that the state spends our collective tax dollars, of course, influences everybody in any number of ways. And there are things that we spend money on specifically with seniors in mind as they relate to elder care or other issues. But most of the things we spend money on that affect seniors affect everybody, right? We're talking about roads and other transportation. We're talking about public safety and the like. But I do want to talk about 2 bills in particular that I'm working on. One relates to property tax, and one relates to safely getting across the street if you move a little more slowly than the typical adult male, which is what most standards are set for, including crosswalk speeds. So which of those two do you want to talk about first?
I wanted to
Question.
get rid of the crosswalk, so I figured we go through there first. So, and then go to the important one, which is the property tax deferral.
I think they're both important, but go on.
Yeah, no, crosswalks really is. I know people are interested because it matters to so many different people. But before we get into the money, let's talk about life.
Yeah.
Right.
So, the when we have crosswalks that are protected by traffic signals, there is the you have the don't walk or the red walking person that says don't walk. And then it either becomes white with a walk sign or even immediately becomes the flashing don't walk sign.
Right.
And that when it's flashing don't walk, you're not supposed to start walking. Many people do anyway, especially if they're fleet of foot. But there's essentially an assumed speed that people walk at. And when the crosswalk signal allows a person to walk, it has to be a minimum of that pace. It could allow for slower people, but it has to have this sort of minimum assumed speed. But that minimum assumed speed is an able-bodied adult. And what can happen is it's the appropriate time for a pedestrian to cross the street, but they move more slowly. Maybe they move more slowly because they have a physical handicap. Maybe they move more slowly because they're a senior and their body moves more slowly. Maybe
Right.
they move more slowly because they're a 3-year-old and they have those teeny tiny little legs. And no matter how fast they try to move them, they're just slow. They're a little person, right? There are lots of different reasons why people move more slowly than the sort of typical adult male. And those people have to get across the street safely too. And so a bill I filed with the support and encouragement of AARP says, hey, if this crosswalk is near a place where we expect people who move more slowly, maybe it's a senior center, maybe it's a physical therapy center for people with injuries to their legs, maybe it's a daycare for the teeny tots. If it's a traffic light near a place where we expect people to move more slowly, then we should program the crosswalks to give those people enough time to get across. So this bill, if passed, wouldn't increase time at every
Right.
crosswalk. It would focus on the ones where we have reason to believe, we have a reasonable certainty that a higher fraction of the users of those particular crosswalks happen to move more slowly for whatever reason. And in those particular crosswalks, we ought to require that municipalities provide more time for people crossing at those locations. So that's a bill that I'm working on. The AARP was really excited about it. They were thinking about it, of course, for retired persons, for older adults. And I said, well, now let's think there are other groups of people that also move
Absolutely.
slowly. And so we were able to include them as well. The bill is going to work its way through the usual process, and I'm hopeful that we'll get it into law soon.
Yeah, I think that often happens, by the way. We have some clout because of numbers, but really the things we're asking for, and that is a really big one, actually, things we're asking for affect everybody. I mean, I did studies once of the automatic doors, and I found more people using them that were carriages than there were people that were older and needed them. So I think that's really good. Just want to endorse that. Glad that you're working on that. Money.
Yeah, let's talk money.
Let's talk
Uh,
money.
so, so in Massachusetts, the vast majority of funding for municipal government services comes from property tax. In Brookline, it's about 90%, right? Maybe
Right.
85%, but it's the overwhelming majority. And in Brookline, most of that property tax revenue comes from residential property tax rather than commercial property tax. And so we get into these circumstances where people own their home, they pay their mortgage, they pay their property tax, and over time, their mortgage eventually goes away if they keep on their payments. But their property tax, of course, never goes away. It only goes up. right? As the cost of providing services goes up, so too does property tax. And this can put seniors in a really difficult position because for seniors who are retired, it is often the case that if they are a homeowner, their single largest bill is their property tax bill. And it's not even once a month, it's once a quarter. And so
Right.
you have seniors who every 3 months are writing a $5,000 check to the town of Brookline. Some are very fortunate and were successful and have more than enough retirement wealth and income to cover that, but others don't. Now, it is my opinion, and not everybody agrees with me. It is my opinion that we should not go out of our way to give reductions in property tax to just about anyone. After all, the senior who no longer has kids in the school probably sent their own children through public schools, if not Brookline, then somewhere, and probably went to public school themselves. And so the idea that now they shouldn't pay for public schools is not an idea that I subscribe to. Some people do. It's an interesting place to have a discussion. But I've noticed that there are plenty of folks who own a home and don't have a whole lot of other assets or a lot of other income, and they still have to pay their property tax. And so the question is, what do we do when people are house rich but cash poor and they want to pay their property tax, they want to do the right thing, but simply just don't have the cash flow? Right now, for most people, the only thing they could possibly do is get a home equity line of credit and take a loan against their property to pay their taxes and then pay the interest over time. The problem with that is not everybody is eligible for a home equity line of credit for a variety of reasons. And it's a rather complex financial service that once people are done with their mortgage, kind of like they don't want anything to do with. And I don't blame them.
It
There is,
introduces organizations and processes
oh yeah, I mean
in between, right? It's like,
and some 70-year-olds are really sharp financial wizards and legal eagles, and this is a breeze. For most people, whether or not they're 70 or 40, the prospect of thinking through both the financial and legal implications of this is really overwhelming. There is a portion in state law which allows for the deferral of property tax. The problem is to qualify for this program is far, far too difficult, and the terms of the program are not fair. To qualify for the program, you have to have lived in your community for 10 years and lived in your home for 5 years. You have to own it outright. And even if you meet those standards, the interest rate goes to 18% on the day you no longer own the home, which could be because you sold it and want to move to a different home, or it could be because you pass on. But 18% is an incredibly high interest rate. And the reality is, if this does go onto your estate, if it goes to probate, realistically, it can easily take a year to sell that home at an 18% interest rate. And so my bill, number one, gets rid of the requirement that you live in the community for 10 years or the home for 5 years. If you're my neighbor and you're a senior and you're low income and you want to take advantage of this program, you should be allowed to take care of this program. It's not for some people. I think it should be for all people who, again, own their home, senior citizen, low income. Those are all necessary to be part of the program. But you shouldn't have to have lived in town for 10 years. I don't like this idea of two different sets of residents. Furthermore, we set the interest rate to be something appropriate, right? We base it on the bond rate that the community pays. In other words, the interest rate that the community pays to borrow money, well, we say it should be that plus a little bit, right? The town is taking some risk in lending the money. It's possible that, for example, the house could burn down and not have fire insurance. And now the person has no money and no home, and now the town doesn't recapture that loan. I'm not so worried about that. I'm not so worried about that, particularly because nowadays the land is often worth more than the houses, right? And the
yeah,
land
absolutely.
doesn't get destroyed if there's, God forbid, a fire or a flood or some other calamity. The land is still there. And so it seems to me that as long as the municipality has that first lien, they are going to get paid back. And we don't want the town to get left holding the bag. We want the town to eventually get the money for the tax revenue, but it doesn't need it all right now. It can come, you know, if there are several hundred seniors in the program, well, every year, some of them, that house is going to turn over, whether or not they move to another community or move on to the afterlife. That property will become available. The loan will get repaid back, and the municipality will stay financially solvent. So my goal is to allow for this property tax deferral program to both allow more people and to have terms that are more fair. I don't want this to be a subsidy for seniors, but I don't want us to expect seniors to subsidize everyone else either. We should treat it fairly, and we should charge an interest rate that's appropriate for what the interest rate the municipality itself sees. The municipality shouldn't be getting rich and shouldn't be getting poor on this program. It should be indifferent.
Right.
And this way, if seniors find this useful, great. And if they don't want to do this, if they would rather pay for their taxes some other way, that's fine too. Um, but the idea is uh, we know that the value of folks' homes is not going to go dramatically down. And we know that you can't sell 1% of your house at a time to pay your property tax, right? And so this is a way to allow more older adults of modest income the ability to be caught up on their taxes, pay to Caesar what is owed to Caesar, um,
Agreed.
with in a way that meets their current financial circumstance, and a circumstance which is quite typical for older adults. It shouldn't surprise any of us.
So are you, can we, is there any other financial one that we should really be concerned about? I think the real estate transfer tax is there. You're active in that. But I think that's less focused on older adults than
Well, the real estate transfer tax is focused on the people who buy and sell
absolutely.
real estate,
Right.
commercial and residential.
Everybody. Right.
Amongst residential, it seems like the two most common people involved in transaction are young people who want to buy a place to live and older adults who are selling their place to live, either because they're downsizing or moving, or again, it's always a reality. The residents have passed away and their next of kin isn't moving in, but is rather selling. And so it's certainly, I would expect, I don't know for sure, but I would expect on the residential market, it overwhelmingly impacts people sort of, 30 to 45 and people maybe 70 and up. Because it seems to me, I don't know for sure, but it seems to me the first group are the kind of folks who are more likely to be buying, and the second group are the kind of people who are more likely to be selling. And the the real estate transfer tax is typically written in Massachusetts to assert that the seller pays the tax.
Right.
It's not clear if in practice what will happen. In fact, anyone who studied microeconomics will tell you that the price of the sale will go up, but not by the whole value of the tax, which means that in practice, the
They're
seller will
paying.
pay some of it and the buyer will pay some of it.
Right.
Um, and we can argue whether or not the use of the revenue is something that folks want or don't want, but it's pretty inarguable that if the real estate transfer tax passes,
Right.
uh, both buyers and sellers will end up being a little bit worse off than they would have been were that tax to not exist. It doesn't exist today. There's been a movement um, in most communities. The push has been to take 100% of the revenue and use it to pay for subsidized housing.
Right.
In Brookline, actually, the real estate transfer tax that Brookline Town Meeting passed and has sent to the legislature, half the money goes to housing and half the money just goes to the general fund.
Right.
To be clear, just because the town meeting passed it doesn't make it law. What the town meeting passed was a home rule petition, and that then goes before the Great and General Court, the Massachusetts House and Senate, who would then have to approve it or not approve it. Over the course of the last 3 or maybe 4 sessions, perhaps as many as 50 real estate transfer tax proposals have come before the legislature, and the legislature has passed none of them so far.
Okay. I would like to move on to, is there anything you'd like to say related to the national situation and its impact on our spending, on our money. I don't want to
Sure.
obviously get into a whole show, but
Yeah,
yeah,
look, the different proposals on tax policy generally, people in different circumstances, they're paying different amount of taxes for different reasons. It's sort of impossible to guess how it impacts individuals. Generally, it's been reported that if you're super rich, Trump's tax policy proposals are good for you, and if you're not, they're not. Um, at least not as good for you. But I don't know to a person, how they impact. I'm more sensitive to the proposals on what the federal government does with that money.
and Medicare, Medicaid,
Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security has not yet been on the chopping block in any formal way.
right?
Although it's no secret that
But you'll be watching,
there's
right?
a substantial section of the Republican Party who wants to reduce Social Security payouts, either by reducing the amount of money paid out or by increasing the retirement age or some combination, maybe for current retirees, maybe for future retirees, right? There's lots of different proposals. But Medicare and Medicaid cuts are on the table now. That
Yes, that's
that
the
is a
one.
live
That's
proposal, and of course it's troubling.
yeah.
Uh, of course it's um,
I just want to know. I want to know that you and the rest of the legislature, hopefully, is is monitoring that, thinking about it, planning possibilities, looking at possibilities, and
yeah,
things
no
will
question.
happen.
And in fact, there's no question that we kind of held back some of the possible spending for the budget that we will vote on in the coming weeks. We kind of left a little money in the bank, a little gas in the tank, because there is a credible risk
Right,
that the federal government provides maybe a billion, maybe $2 billion less money in healthcare financing, Medicare, Medicaid, and so forth, than it has promised or than it has paid in the past. If that happens, it's unlikely that the state can backfill all of that money. But if we can fill some of it, and lessen the pressure, that's worth doing. The hope right now is that there are enough Republican members of the House and Senate who say, wait a minute. In fact, there are more Republicans using these services than Democrats. Even if we're only looking out for Republicans, um, we should be aware of this. We should push back against this. There are plenty of people in Kansas and in West Virginia and in Wyoming who are on Medicare or Medicaid who would be hurt by reducing those payments. Hopefully, in my view, those legislators speak up for those people.
yeah, I hope so too. And as far as well, elder care is the same. I think it's the same situation basically.
Similar, certainly,
So,
elder care. I've said it before. Seniors are the most diverse population there are,
yeah,
because in addition to sort of the demographic diversity that seniors also have a dramatic diversity in their um, mental faculties and their physical faculties, their ability to sort of move through the world and wherever they are on their journey, right? Like everyone else, they deserve good health care, physical, mental, and they deserve dignity. And so when we talk about um, services for seniors in different stages of their healthcare journey. That could be everything from someone coming to the senior's home once or twice a week, just to
right.
make sure a few things are just right. I know a senior who she's fully functional, except she can't put groceries away up high. She can take them down. She just can't quite get them up. That can of baked beans, she just can't get there. So she just needs somebody to help her put away the groceries on the upper cabinets. That's it. That's all she needs. Um, she doesn't need to go to a nursing home for that, right? Um, but there are people who do need to be in sort of care during the day and then return home in the evenings. There are other people who need 24-hour care. There are other people who need 24-hour ongoing intensive medical care, right?
Yeah.
Lots of different varieties, and that care can be very expensive, as you know.
So
And And so it's reasonable for the government to help pay for it,
Right.
because these are folks who have spent their lives contributing to our society. The least we could do is allow them to spend their last years as comfortable and as engaged as they're able to be.
So one more similar, the senior center.
Mhm.
I've seen you, I've heard you talk about it. I've seen you, you visit obviously a lot. I've seen you there. But the modernization of it, just a quick uh, summary if you know where it is or what's happening with that.
Well, what I do know is that Ruth Ann Dobeck has retired,
We know that.
and she was, she did such a wonderful job for so many years, really kind of invented the Brookline Senior Center in many ways, and she'll be missed. But also that Emily Williams, the new director, is fantastic.
Yeah, she's great.
And so I have no doubt that Emily will build on Ruth Ann's success,
Yep.
bring some new ideas, some new possibilities, maybe some new sources of revenue,
And I want to know that you're working with her and you will be in contact. And
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We go out to coffee. We hang out at events, check in all the time. And as you know, the senior center, it's not especially big for a community as big as
no,
Brookline.
it isn't. It's crowded.
And
It's
it's sort of bursting at the seams.
yep,
It's a victim of its own success in some ways. And so there are really healthy ongoing conversations about how to acquire more space. There's a building that it kind of backs onto on Center Street.
yep.
There may be a partnership there. There's been talks that maybe the senior center could do some daytime programming at the Brookline Teen Center when, after all, the teens are at school.
Right.
Sort of this sort of 8 to 2:30 time period. And the teen center is in Brookline Village. And so that becomes walkable to a different set of seniors.
Absolutely.
There's also been conversations about what to do with 150 Fisher Ave, which is where the Pierce Upper School
Right.
is located right now. Once Pierce is finished and that facility is no longer needed for public education, what do we do with that space? That's right next to the reservoir at the top of Fisher Hill, which is now a ball field.
Oh yeah.
And
Beautiful.
that is not as accessible by transit. It's really not accessible by transit. It does have a parking lot, but it's space that the town owns. And so maybe there could be some community center or senior center programming there. Maybe there's even an opportunity to take the senior bus and the teen center bus and the rec bus and create a Brookline municipal kind of circulator bus.
That would be really
Everybody who needs to get from
yeah.
here to there that the MBTA doesn't go to, help
Right.
everybody get
No,
here.
I think that would be really nice. We're reaching the end, believe it or not. We could go on for hours, but that's what I wanted to hear because you're exactly on top of everything happening in that area, and that's exactly what I wanted to hear. And I think others want to hear that too, so they know to come after you.
Work with me.
You'll
Work
know,
with me.
yeah, right. Work with you, and they'll know what you're asking, and they'll know that you'll know what they're asking for. So, and you'll be working with Emily, which is excellent. Okay, I'm sorry, we're at the end. You can come back anytime.
This is what happens. We have a good time.
I know.
We run into each
Let
other
me-
both on and off camera on a regular basis, and time goes quick when you're having fun.
Yep. Well, thank you. Thank you, Tommy. And to everybody, the program will be rebroadcast several times the next few weeks. And all of these programs are available on the Brookline Can website and on the Brookline Can Facebook and X, Twitter, whatever we want to call it, accounts. Thank you very much. Thanks
Thanks
again.
for having me on the show.
Yeah, anytime.